Hello everyone, I'm Elle. This is Vegan FTA and I'm here with Vegan Power Lab today. Hello Vegan Power Lab, how are you?
Hello, everyone.
Hello, and obviously your name is not Vegan Power Lab, so if you could just introduce yourself quickly, that would be fantastic.
What do you mean my name is not Vegan Power Lab? It's obviously Vegan Power Lab. I was born with the name Vegan. When people say that I was born vegan, it's just my name Vegan and then the last name Power. And Lab is a middle name. It's actually Vegan Lab Power. No, my name is Cyprian, hence the Mr. Chip here on the wall. Yeah, that's my name. I'm from Romania originally. That's why the name. That's most people pronounce it as Sip, but I don't really mind how you pronounce it because I didn't really choose my name, so I'm okay with whatever you think is okay.
Fantastic. And you've been on YouTube for how long have you been on YouTube for now? Time just passes very weirdly.
As a watcher or as a publisher?
As an uploader, yeah.
As a publisher, I would say I've been or an uploader. I've been on YouTube for well, publishing long conversations for little less than no 8 months. I would say 8 months, somewhere
Eight
around that.
months. And in that
Yeah,
short time, you actually get quite a lot of people come and watch your streams. You stream your outreach, which is really interesting.
yeah.
How do you find that? Like you're on the fly, like you don't know what people are going to say to you in public. You're being streamed. Like how does it feel?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's I enjoy doing the live outreach more than the other ones because I don't have to do the editing.
True.
So then I'm like, I like editing, but it is work. It is work to put into editing.
Mm.
Um, and I also get instant feedback from people where when I'm talking to somebody, I get instant feedback and they can say, "Oh, maybe you should have tackled this other side better." Um, I mean, I'm obviously every time I go there, I'm nervous. When I do live outreach, I'm always nervous. But it kind of goes away after the one or two conversations because it doesn't feel like I'm doing it live. It just feels like I'm doing outreach, basically.
Absolutely. And I don't actually know the answer to this question, so I thought I'd ask you, like, what made you go vegan?
Uh, Joey Carbstrong made me go vegan. So I was vegetarian for a while. I wasn't really looking into it if being vegetarian is good enough for the animals. I just assumed that it was good enough for the animals. And I started watching online debates, and Joey had these interesting conversations and debates with people on the street. And I just watched more and more of his content. And at some point, I something clicked within me. I'm like, okay, well, I can't justify it. I have to be vegan. And then when it clicked, I started being vegan overnight.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is that probably then why you do the outreach that you do because you know that it worked for you?
Yeah, exactly. I do the outreach that I do because I know that it worked for you. And specifically, the reason why I almost in every outreach I mention the dairy industry and what dairy cows go through is because that actually worked on me really well because it's one of those things where you don't really realize just how messed up it is.
Yeah, the dairy industry for me as well was the kicker that made me realize, oh, actually, we view animals as things to just
Yeah.
use, and the dairy industry really highlights that, and it also highlights how much we hide it, like societally, how the media represents dairy is this really positive thing. You know, it's really good for the cows. There's nothing bad happening, and then you realize just how dreadful it is. So it's very powerful that that affected you as well. What would you say the most compelling reason to go vegan is?
The most compelling reason to go vegan. First of all, I don't believe. Well, I believe that veganism is for everybody. I think everybody can be vegan. I don't think that everybody wants to be vegan, and by that, obviously, when we do outreach, we understand what that means. But what I mean by that is that not everybody cares even the little bit about animals enough to say that they deserve to live, which is kind of saddening to see. But most people do, but not everyone. And if I were to meet with somebody who mostly does. I guess I would tell them about the dairy industry. If I could only say one thing, is I would tell them exactly about the practices in the dairy industry and ask them if they want to be complicit in this. But I don't know, like my usual outreach would always just kick in, and I would just always go along the same lines. It depends, right, on which person it is. If it's a friend where I can have an intellectual conversation, I would start discussing about intrinsic values of animals. If it's a stranger where they would ask me why I went vegan, or for some reason they want to know something interesting about veganism, I would tell them about the dairy industry, and then tell them about some form of how animals deserve to live and be free. And if they agree with that, then why not? Like if they have a pet, I would maybe try to bring a comparison with the pet, something along those lines. I would try to appeal basically to the person in front of me to some extent.
Well, that's funny you say you try and appeal to the person in front of you, because that's something I like about your outreach. You take a moment with them before to find out what they're passionate about. Yeah. Now, it might be an obvious question, but why do you do that?
So at first I wasn't doing that when I was doing outreach. At first I was just talking to people on the, like, normally. And then I think I watched a video online that was taking apart the arguments why Earthling Ed is such a good animal rights activist, why his conversations are so good. And one of the reasons was because they were saying that, well, he has this conversations with people beforehand where he asks them where they're from, kind of what they are. I decided, okay, I should probably ask that to number one, where they're from, how they are. And then at some point, I also realized that we need to establish moral baseline with people before we actually go into veganism, because the minute you go into veganism, everything is thrown out the window. Like the whole logic gets thrown out the window.
Yeah.
So then I based on kind of what Lucy Munson was doing and kind of what other activists have been doing, I set up a set of questions to try and get the moral baseline of these people. And before I set the moral baseline, I realized as I was writing the questions that there's multiple ways of these questions where you can address them. You can address it with the idea of consent, you can address it with the idea of oppression and all this other stuff. And they're all kind of similar, but they're different in the ways that what matters to you, right? So then I asked myself, well, how do I find out what people care about? And I actually used ChatGPT with that one, where I had a brainstorming session with ChatGPT and asked them, okay, well, please help me out on understanding what I could ask them to find out which method to use on them. And I don't know, it wasn't from the start, as it never is with ChatGPT, but rather after a couple of iterations, I realized that if they're passionate about the social cause, then it might be important. And I also realized, as I was doing it, that if they're women, it's better to do the consent. I think women understand consent better than men. It's kind of saddening to hear that, but they do. And if they are men, they somehow understand well, I don't think men understand oppression better, to be honest. I think oppression applies to both. I just think consent is somehow understood better than men, better by women than men. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And how often do you do outreach?
That's it depends. I have weeks when I do it 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah, you do it a lot.
Yeah, I have weeks when I do that. I don't publish a lot of the conversations sometimes just because I don't enjoy the conversations that I had, because I feel like I maybe made a mistake where I forgot to mention one thing or the other. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna publish this conversation. But most of the times when I either go like, and I do 3 hours or 4 hours of activism, or like if I go with We the Free, I go beforehand an hour or two, do some activism on my own, and then do the activism with We the Free. So then it's like 5 hours of activism. Or if I do live outreach, it's, I don't know, 2 hours of activism. But when I go like 5 times per week, I go like 1 hour per day. I find some time in my day, and I say, like in Amsterdam, it's so easy. Because I just take my bike. It takes me 10 to 15 minutes to get to not even 15, what I'm saying, 10 minutes to get to a place where it's full of people. And I just pull up my sign, and then another 10 minutes, somebody's talking to me. So it takes me basically 20 minutes to start a conversation. And depending on the place, I might get 5 conversations within an hour.
I was going to ask you, my next question was how many people do you end up speaking to? And about 5 conversations in an hour is really good. What's on your sign? What do you use to get people to talk to you?
I have a couple of signs. Let me show you.
Oh.
So I have this is the one that I use most prominently, that I'm doing a social experiment. I think this one attracts the most people. Sometimes I have, when I'm a bit in a moody day, I just hold the signs. Why are you not vegan?
When you're just ready for it.
Yeah, when I just, yeah, tell me. and I used to hold this one. Let's play Would You Rather, but I don't play that much Would You Rather anymore. I guess the Let's Play Would You Rather works really well when you're like in a party. When people are in a party mode, you attract a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
The vegan sign attracts the least people. Like I've been standing with the vegan sign in one place where there were a large masses of populations passing by, and I think I got 1 person per hour, which is insane compared to any other sign. And within that hour, I have had at least 6 people yelling at me that they're vegan. And I'm like, why are you vegan? And then they would say some bullshit reason, so they weren't actually vegan. So I'm like, what? Is this a thing where people say they're vegan just to avoid conversation? Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience when I've been doing outreach for Vegan FTA, and we hold up a sign about veganism, and there's loads of people like, oh, good on you, well done, I'm vegan. And then, yeah, nobody wants to have that conversation. So maybe when it comes to outreach, people should be avoiding the word, because it's quite a dirty word, unfortunately. And sadly, and it's quite clever to keep it out of the conversation. And you are doing a social experiment, because you begin finding their values, seeing what they are, and then you realize that they don't typically. The conversation goes, oh, oppression is bad. Oh, but this oppression's okay. So yeah, that's fantastic that you do that. I want to pivot for 1 second, because something that people might not know, because you're wearing a t-shirt right now, is you're quite the bodybuilder.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're quite the bodybuilder. So I have to ask you, because you're vegan, what do you eat?
So I am. My relationship with food, I'll try to make a short history. My relationship with food has been one of coming from a hypochondriac. I used to be a hypochondriac. I still roughly am. So I started from thinking that everything that is natural is good. I would appeal to nature. Then I learned about all the logical fallacy, and then I stopped appealing to nature. And now I'm at a place where food for me is 80% of the time it's just fuel. Like it's just supposed to be highly nutritious, and 20% of the time it's supposed to be as delicious as I can, right? So in that sense, I eat a lot of tofu. I won't deny a lot of tofu. It's a lot. I get some in the Netherlands. You have every week there's a brand of mock meats or plant-based meats that is discounted. And I think there's only one brand that I don't like, that I never buy from them. And there's only one item from, or maybe 2 items from other brands that I like, and I buy them. And it's funny, because for me, they don't really reminisce of meat necessarily. They just kind of are already versions of like tofu-like dishes that are already marinated. So I just have to put them in a pan, and then with some air-fried potatoes or some broccoli and stuff like that. That's kind of my go-to meal. Just broccoli, air-fried potatoes, kimchi. I love kimchi. Is on every meal. That's the one thing that's never missing. Yeah, and then just some protein source. It's I used to cook a lot of Indian food before, but nowadays, because I've been pretty busy doing outreach, editing, and all that stuff, it's my meals take 20 minutes to make, and I usually just use an air fryer and some combination of that. Yeah.
Ah, fantastic. So what you're saying is you're a soy boy.
I'm 100% a soy boy. Yes.
Same. Okay, well that's fantastic. And yeah, you are built. You're a bodybuilder. You are showing that you can be physically strong. Yeah, and I'm also on a bit of a bodybuilding journey myself, and realizing how much protein is in plant-based mock meats. It's just like, why are people worrying?
It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we'll go back to the outreach. I'm interested in knowing about your best outreach experience. What is the one that has made you go, that was fantastic and I'm so glad I'm doing this?
So there was one outreach when I started writing the consent experiment. I think the first or the second conversation, I don't know. It was the first time I tried it that day. I don't remember which number conversation it was, but it was the first time I tried it that day. Well, not that day. That day was the first time I tried that experiment, and there was a guy who came to me and I asked him exactly this: what is it that you care about? And I think the conversation is online, and he said that he cares a lot about consent and women having consent, and he fights for. He works at a frat place in US. Like I'm missing all these words.
I've seen this one. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a long conversation, but I really did enjoy it. Not because like he obviously came up with all the common excuses, but he listened, and that was, I like having conversation. I love having conversations with people. I love listening. I love even back and forth. I love being challenged about it even. But like when the conversations are one-sided, when either we mention something and then they don't listen and they come up with another argument and they don't listen and then it just becomes recursive because if they don't listen, nothing happens. Mm-hmm. Then the conversations become really bad, and almost all conversations are to some form that, right? Like in almost all conversations, there is a place where I think most people either stop listening or cannot go back and forth where you can actually discuss something. But with this guy, he was all the way open. And even towards the end, when he said he doesn't know if he wants to go vegan, when I said that, okay, but you understand that while you don't know, you should go at least plant-based just because you don't know whether it's good or bad. And he understood, and he's like, yeah, you're right, I should, and I will do that. And I'm like, okay. I don't know if he did all that, by the way, right? I don't know if it was a success story, but the conversation was gold to me, if you ask me. So yeah.
Yeah, no, when you said that he worked in this frat house, it completely jogged my memory. And yeah, I remember that was a really good conversation. And it's really nice and refreshing to see when somebody's so open like that, because a lot of the time people do struggle to have these sorts of open conversations with people, especially strangers. So yeah, but to be interesting as well, like what has been your worst outreach experience?
I mean, it's definitely not, that one is definitely not published. It's hard to say, right? Because for me, worst outreach, definitely it has happened every time I go outreaching. There is at least one really bad conversation, and not because of the conversation being bad, but because of the language barrier, right? That happens.
Okay.
That's one reason for the conversation to go bad. But otherwise, my worst conversation was, I think I also published the one that I think was bad, but a lot of people did enjoy it, where this one guy just coming with excuses left and right, and I ended up being pretty ticked off about it. I usually am very calm during outreach conversations, but I ended up being quite annoyed by his plants have feelings. Oh, you don't know. And he was laughing and he was like, oh, and it got me annoyed a bit about the whole thing. So would I say that's a good conversation? I don't think so. But, it's I am learning more and more how to measure what a good conversation is. And a lot of times on my channel, I also try to talk to other vegan outreach people to understand how they define a good conversation, because I think it's an important conversation to have, right? Should we be focused more on the person that we're doing outreach, or should we be more focused on the people watching, who watch the outreach, what they think, right? Like,
I guess, you mentioned Joey Carbstrong beforehand, and he publishes a lot of comments where the person is really not open and they are showing every excuse in the book. And sometimes a really good conversation can get you, but just seeing how insufferably bad your side of the argument can be really powerful as well. Like if you just see someone being like, oh, bacon though, plants have feelings though, I would imagine I'd be feeling quite embarrassed that I'm on that side. So I guess it could be a good conversation in the sense of, it's something that if a non-vegan sees, it could be a powerful tool. It could be a part of that journey towards, planting a seed, basically. So it wasn't a really good conversation between two strangers, but it was a good conversation in the sense of it had some utility, I would say.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm trying to navigate that because I'm leaning more and more towards that being the truth. That conversation, good conversation, is actually one that portrays the carnist as unreasonable and the vegan as logical and reasonable, right? Because that's what we're kind of going for regular people. Otherwise, any other person, like for me, what did it for Joey wasn't the portraying of any of these people, but rather the exact arguments that somehow kind of matched with my arguments, right? Because with every video that I watched, one of my arguments was explained, but then I had a different argument to respond with, and that person didn't respond with that argument. So that conversation just took me one step a little bit further. And then when I saw another video and that person brought up the argument that I would have brought it brought it even a little bit closer. So I think it was like 3 arguments, and then I was like, okay, yeah, that's it. I gotta be vegan. So
Yeah.
So it might be that that's how it works for a lot of people, where they're like, where they hear an argument and they're like, oh, I would have used this argument also. Let's see what they respond with. But then if they would have responded otherwise differently, they need to see another video where they see the response being different. So
yeah. I've now got an exercise for you. Okay. So you have 30 seconds to get someone to go vegan. 30 seconds, that's all you've got. What do you say?
Okay, let me wait before I jump into it. Let me. I have some time to think about it, right? That's not.
Yeah, you have some time to think about it.
Okay. 30 seconds to say to somebody. I guess. Well, the reason. Let me. Oh, this is a hard one. This is not an easy one. 30 seconds for somebody to go vegan. If you believe that animals deserve to live and be free, if you believe that a dog, a pet that you've probably at some point felt some relationship with, deserves to live and be free, and you have seen them feel, then all the animals that we farm in the animal agriculture are the same. They are exploited and slaughtered for something that is essentially optional to us. So if you can choose to not participate in that, then I think you have the moral obligation to make that choice. Something along those lines.
That was actually fantastic. I love that. That was really powerful. Yeah. I want to know your position on people being active. Do you think it's important for people to be activists like yourself?
I think it is, yes. I think if you're not comfortable being in front of a camera, that's okay. You don't have to be in front of a camera. If you're not comfortable being in confrontational discussions, you don't have to have confrontational discussions with people about veganism. But I think it's important that we do speak up, because with every person that you outreach, even if that person doesn't become vegan, you still push them, as I said, a little bit closer to it. And maybe at some point they do become vegan. And one person going vegan, can actually make changes, the change can trickle down pretty a lot. You don't know who that person, first of all, is going to be vegan. Maybe they're going to be an activist also, like I did, right? I became a vegan and activist. And I think it's important that we as vegans don't just sit by. If you can, yeah, go do activism. That doesn't necessarily mean, see it as a moral obligation. I wouldn't call it a moral obligation. I would say you should. I would say it would be nice if you can, but if you're a mother of 2 children, single mother, and you barely have any time, or I don't even know, for some reason you barely have time to do activism, then don't force yourself to do it just to feel better or just so that you don't feel guilty, but rather do it whenever you have the option to do it, choose to do it. That's kind of the same.
Yeah, I think there's this kind of pressure of doing outreach and certain forms of activism when there are so many things that someone can do. I'm sure you've done it yourself, where you've utilized all forms, where you've posted pictures, reposted people's content. People could always do with reposting. They could do the hard work for you, where they do the speaking to people, scary stuff, you know, or going out and doing direct action or something like that. And they could, if you don't really have much time, then that's when something like a repost or something could come in handy, you know, so more and more people see it. So yeah, it is really important for people to go active, and it's really good to see people like yourself who are active. And that's why I asked the questions about how many people you end up talking to, how effective it is, you know, good outreach experiences, so people know that it's possible to do this and it goes successfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you touched upon I'm sorry for interrupting there. You touched upon a great point there. I don't, you're right. Maybe my answer was mostly about outreach, not necessarily activism, but you're right. There's different forms of activism. And I think each and every one of us can spare, if not per day, per week, at least an hour per week where we do like cumulative 1 hour per week where we do some form of activism, whether that means watching a vegan video, like a vegan outreach video, and dropping a comment and a like, whether that means resharing, whatever it is, you're helping out the whole movement. Maybe even going into the comments section and saying to responding to a kindness, because that's also useful, right?
Absolutely. Chip, so just we're coming to the end now. Would you be able to kind of tell people where they can find your channel and other social media platforms where you're active and what you do over there?
Sure. So my channel name is Vegan Power Lab, just like it is in my passport. No, it's not. But it's my channel name is Vegan Power Lab. I do mostly outreach videos. I will be posting a little bit of different content I am planning on posting content for to normalize veganism. I think it's also very important that we normalize veganism, where I maybe do some challenges or stuff like that, like common internet challenges, but like tailored towards veganism. I am on YouTube, so same thing, Vegan Power Lab, one word. I'm on TikTok also, and on Instagram, Vegan Power Lab. What you will find on Instagram as content, you will find everywhere else. On YouTube, I do have the long form videos, which are specifically tailored to YouTube. And on TikTok, I have started recently doing live streams on TikTok specifically, where I invite people on TikTok to have conversations with me. So those are also entertaining if you ask me. They're kind of nice. Yeah.
Chip, thank you so much for being on here, and thank you to everyone watching.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.